Thank you. So we have this one, and now we want this one. I'm going to go ahead and download it. Session 11, although now it's 10. Electrical drawing. Okay, so here is a bunch of symbols that I'm just giving to you. You can ignore all this stuff unless you need it, but most of you are caught up enough to at least have the right patio and deck. This is the point where the grace period, I say, okay, people who haven't caught up, just take the symbols, take the minus deduction, and add these things. So that's why those are in there. There's a lot of things like labels that we'll use in later weeks to do our detail drawing, mechanical legends, so things like a 6-inch can light, 4-inch can light. Some of these things, they're all blocks, all right? So they are kind of weird to use and you want to actually explode them before you use them. They're more just me giving you symbols so you know what a block should look like if it's correct and get an idea of what some of the symbols should be. I know Professor King gives you just tons of documents. I just like to standardize on the most basic symbols and have them available for you inside of CAD. So here's these legends that you can copy in. This is a legend for the lighting, power, and communication plan because it has our things like our recept. So that's where you plug your plugs into your house, right? Like our duplex receptacle, our ground fault circuit interrupter. Those are the ones that have to be used in water areas such as the bathroom and the kitchen and sometimes in the laundry room so that we can have that hard reset on them. And then range hood, cabinet lighting, different things like that. So our lighting, power, and communication plan is all of the electrical items that come below the ceiling line and anything that's on the ceiling, both of those things. And we want to see how the switches control our lights versus our reflected ceiling plan, which only shows things that are above. And so really we would lose these ones and then we would end up having just the can lights. We wouldn't have any of our switches or switching lines, just like things like our ceiling fans. If you want to say something about a tile or a beam over here, this is where your legend would be. Nothing that's below, like our receps on the wall. So these are things to copy in. I'm going to take the time and I'll probably just copy this whole honkin' thing. So Control C and come into Misty's. Go ahead.
Do you think it's pretty standard to have like ceiling fans in almost every room?
I'm not a ceiling fan human being, but I understand them. And so when you say, is it standard, are you saying, is that silly or is that a normal thing?
I just hadn't considered a ceiling fan this whole time until we've been talking about them.
I think it's totally aesthetic. So
Okay.
I hate them because I have a super ultra modern house but if this would, and it depends on like airflow and what you're wanting to do. There's some really beautiful ones like the really big fan blades that look fairly tropical if you're going for that kind of things, or there's the big industrial metal fan, you know what I mean? So sometimes they're cool, but I wouldn't just plop one up there to plop it up there. It'd have to be really specific to your concept.
Okay, so it's not like it doesn't...
No, not required in every room.
Okay, you don't think it like benefits like the environment of the home?
I think there's an argument for that it moves dust around and is equally as unhealthy as it could be healthy. I think there's other alternatives that you could do if you want to have good air quality. But that's a story for another class that I don't teach anymore. So maybe someday I will teach it. All right, let's see. So over here, we've got all types of things, single switches. Are you pretty clear on these things? You had a class with Professor King today. I don't know how, like if you're like, yeah, I know what a single switch is versus a two-way switch versus a three-way.
She did go through those three.
Okay.
And the majority of them.
Okay. So
we had a very long lecture on lighting.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Now remember it all because that's your job. I know it's so easy and then you'll just get it. So there's those things. When we're thinking about I'm actually blanking on them right now, but those switches where we're turning them on in 2 locations, I want to say is actually the S3, right? Where it's
Yes.
from, I have one at the
No.
door and I have one across the room. And so,
I don't remember.
Yeah, it was S3. I never saw an S2 on any of the plans that she showed us. It was always S3.
okay. So S3 is like if you walk in the house and you had a switch right here at the door, but then you're like, well, by the time I walk over here, I might want to turn off this entryway light or have the ability when I wake up in the morning coming out of this room, turn it on here and not have to go there. If you have a switch that controls a light from 2 locations, I do believe that is your S3. And that's where you'd use that, which would be different than just a switch. If you just wanted a switch here that's only connected to this light, and then you walk into the next room and the next switch controls the next series of lighting. So there are different switches for different things, and that's why we have little symbols. This is a pretty big symbol still. Like, I really am just giving you them so that you have an idea of what they look like, and then you can scale them appropriately to where they're readable but not taking up so much physical space that it's obnoxious, okay? Let's look at it for these different spaces. What's a good one? Maybe her master bedroom. Usually I do the kitchen and dining room, but we have to have our switches. At this point, this is stuff that is going to be toggled on and off. So when you're showing your lighting, power, and communication plan, most of the time you want to be aware of your furniture to put it on, right? So I'm like, well, I don't want to have light. I want my lights above the table, or I want a special light above this, etc. I almost wish I had someone else's plan because she didn't have a ton of furniture, but we will work with what we've got. So I'm turning her furniture on. We're going to work in this room, okay? So I do always love a good S3. If I have it here, and this is the pull side of my door, then I would want my switch coming off of this in here. Usually I wouldn't just have it floating. I would then grab a line and say, here's where I want that center line of the switch plate to be coming off of the wall. So I reach in and I have my switch. Then this is her master bath. Maybe she wants the ability to turn on whatever lights are going to be here from here and here. So if I have my other opportunity for a switch over here, I would put a copy of that switch there, which I didn't copy it, I moved it. I'm going to record it until I die tonight, just so you know. You can leave at 7:50 when you have to. So then in here, we draw again a little line, just a stubby little line connecting it to the wall. So then what is the light that this person has in their room? Well, again, she has this weird thing where she has a slope. So we don't want to forget about that, but we're not on the reflected ceiling plan. So just for the sake of it, while I'm thinking through placing my switches and where my lights are going to go. So usually we'd kind of like place our lights on this plan and copy them up to there. That's why they're in that order on the plan. Let me see. I want to copy this about a point so that it goes into the right spot. And turn my points back on. So if I have this down here, there's the slope above her bed. So if that's true and that's how Misty wants it, we probably wouldn't have like 2 can lights above the bed and then whatever. But thinking about this empty space, my favorite plan is the reflected ceiling plan. I'm a weirdo because I'm a technician. So I would say we got to create a ceiling plan lights layer. What is the one that we included earlier? I know is it ceiling fixtures? I saw one in her plan. Ceiling symbols, right? So you could use that, or you could be more specific and say lighting, etc. We probably have one of those if we come down to here. Yep, lighting. So I'm going to click on turn it on because she has it off. I'm going to make lighting active, and I'm going to look at some of these symbols. So is this accurate to what I have in these mechanical legends? Let's see, for their sizes and such. Here's an incandescent light fixture. What is the size of this guy? This has to match your specifications. So if you say, I want a 6-inch can light, then that's usually the diameter of it. This one, for instance, is 8 inches, but you can tell it's just a circle with 4 lines projecting out of it. So if I was starting from scratch or wanted to use any of those, I could say most of the time they're more like a 4-inch can light. They're not super big, and it could be LED or it could be incandescent. So think about what style. 4 inches. Let's see. That's my radius. So we'll do 2.
I'm curious about LED lighting. It seems like it's really powerful. Is it used inside, like for residential lighting?
Oh yeah, my parents have
Yeah.
all LED can lights. They have like these nice diffused covers that go with them, but of course they have lower lumens, so they are
Okay.
really bright. That means they take up less power, which is what you're saving on, right? But they are used internally.
Okay.
They have a different glow, and there's multiple, you know, like warm, just like incandescents, you have different options for the color of your light, but yes, they are option. So when I'm planning a light setup in here, I would say maybe I'd want something decorative above the bed, maybe on the wall, but in here, it can't just be random, right? No one's sitting around their house just copying these can lights and be like, we'll put a little over here. It's almost like that you want to keep them on an invisible grid. So this is a no. If your plan looks like that, you're silly. We're not going to do that. Usually lights are connecting into joists at the ceiling where it's like the wood that's up above in that attic space, and between them there's this big metal bracket that's hanging the can. So we're kind of thinking about the engineering of what it looks like, and that's why it's better to keep them in rows, and then of course they can go across this way or up and down this way. So once I decide a good spot for my can, which really I think I want it further away from my bed and kind of centered, like maybe right in here a little bit more.
Do we know where those joists are, or are you just saying to keep them
I'm just trying to
uniform?
give you no, you don't.
Okay.
I mean, you could look up and Google the amount of feet that's standard in a residential ceiling joist. I don't know if it's like, I want to say 8. That sounds like a good number to me. So no, you do not know. But you should always think a little bit about the truth of what's happening so people believe you. So if I come up here and I'll say 5 foot, enter, and then I could copy this one, and I'm going to copy it 5 foot. So kind of creating my grid. And I'd say, you know, this one's kind of like really close to the wall. So as you're thinking, you're like, should I move these anymore? And is this enough? How do you know if it's enough? Well, at this stage, you're like still new people. You're not in the stage where you've taken the class where you've figured out necessarily. Have some of you taken building systems? No?
I haven't.
Well, Revit and building systems go together. So when you take that class, you'll learn how to calculate lumens per square foot, et cetera, et cetera. But right now you're eyeballing it and not being obnoxious. So it's like, I don't want 50 lights. You're right. Some of them are very bright. So I like to think mostly in a line. Maybe we want one, like you can come off your grid, like sometimes. So we're like, maybe like, you know, the classic 5 kind of star pattern. So then it's like, if I got this one, I liked this one, and I pull it over here, and then in about equidistant from the bed on that side, I pull that down. You're kind of drawing this artistic grid of lights that I go, this one's too much lighting, right? And so now I've got this 4-point grid. These need to move over a little bit because I'm basing it off the side of my bed. Move over until it looks about right. And this one needs to be centered with my bed more. That's the good thing about using your furniture, and that's the good thing about completely demoing a house, right? You get to decide where everything goes that goes with your furniture plan. There's nothing better than that much freedom. So I'm like, okay. Now, honestly, this light's really close to the corner. Like, it's not being very useful. So if we move it a little bit forward, then I feel like that would be better. And then I can move this back. So you've got some can lights. They're small, they're not giant 6-inch can lights. And they look like I'm trying to decorate something well. If we thought, okay, here's this slope, but in here, what if I actually have the can light, but this one is a fancy chandelier of some type, okay? So we'll say, no, this is going to be a moment like right at the end of the bed as you walk into the room, nearish above this chair. I'm gonna have my fancy decorative light. You want it to match, like, let's say this decorative light was contemporary and it had its double thing and it had little points coming off of it. Whatever this symbol is reflects the plan view, just like a chair, of what you would be seeing for that symbol in your specifications. So if it's fancy, it should look fancy, but I just don't have time for that lifestyle. So here's the start. Now, you could have all of these things, even though they're different fixtures, just like when you plug stuff into your kids' rooms and you're like, okay, here's the little light over here and this one. If they are all on this S3 switch circuit, they could all go on and off together, or you could have a switch that controls all of these from 2 locations and then one single switch that turns this on, because it doesn't need to be on all the time, right? So that's where I need to start adding my switching lines, which should be a new layer and we haven't created yet. So for my lighting, power, and communication plan, I'm going to say switching lines. And I'm going to make it active. And I want it to be dashed. And dashed or dashed too, but we'll start with dashed. So then I'm going to use a series of arcs. Right now, her arc is on 3-point, which I like. And I usually start from my switch, and then I go to my first light, okay? Now, I am super anal about this, but I'm trying to be nice because we are all struggling. So I will try not to be myself when I'm grading these. But anyway, I don't like them being all random, okay? So you want to find a way to say all these lights are connected to this switch in a beautiful way, that when you look at the switching lines, they make a pretty arrangement, basically. They shouldn't be shooting through like you come to this one, then come to this one, then go to that. So usually it's just a series of arcs with similar curvature, going in, going out. You know, I'm curving mine inward. They could have also done the brackety going out, going out, going out. So that shows that I've connected all of these lights. If I really wanted less lights, because like the less lines that are cluttering my space, I could have just looped the outside and then connected over here on the other side. You can adjust your arcs, which I'll show you after placement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aren't them supposed to be dashed?
They are dashed, but they're just
Yeah.
not, they are. So if I regen, and I come in here, and if they aren't, then I can do that with its properties. So I select them all at once, like we did earlier with the cabinetry, right? And so then we can right-click properties with all of them selected at once and dash them after. But see how small the dash is? That's why you're not seeing it. So if I make it bigger, then you'll see it a little bit more. And you can change the size of that dash in here too. So if you said we wanted it to be 3 instead of 2 or 12, they have to be connected when we do it.
Oh.
My baby's trying to get his cup. 12, enter. Then it'll change the size of them. And we do want to do them individually like this, right? So we want to select them, and we could select them all after the fact. Also, like select every room and then do them all at once. But they were dashed. They were just being kind of sneaky. All right, so properties, same thing. We want to know what line type. I think I was with dashed. And who knows what I landed on at this point, 27, something crazy. All right, so something like that. We get our arcs in here, and then it comes here. So this tells me I can turn it on here and here, and they'll all go on and off. But this guy, he needs a different switch because I like the idea of my decorative light not being on all of the time. So I would come up and grab a single switch and copy it and put it near this switch on the same wall. Now, if this is an independent thing, that would have been even better. I could just take this whole unit and copy it at the size I want over like that. And then you want your arcs to, as much as possible, not interfere with each other so it's easier for your people to read. Okay, so come around the outside. I can do 2 arcs if that bend is going to become problematic, where I just then come in here and then arc it around like that. And I noticed just now that these were on my lighting layer and not on my switching lines. So see, the switching line layer was dashed like we had it set up to be earlier. So now I know that this ceiling fixture is connected to this and only controlled here. All right, so every plan looks kind of beautiful like this, but there's other things happening in a room. And that is all of our plugs, right? For our iPhones and our TVs and whatever else we want. So I could have just a basic duplex receptacle that isn't ground fault because it's her bedroom, not her bathroom. I'm gonna Control C that and come back down to plan down here. A good rule of thumb for these things is every 8 feet. That's pretty standard in residential developments to have them every 8 feet. So it seems gratuitous, but in reality, if you kind of look at your houses, they might be older like mine and it's more like 12 or 10, but that's a good rule of thumb. So it's long prongs towards the walls, short prongs away. Long prong attaches to the wall, short prong goes away. And I could just rotate it. So for this little tiny piece of wall, I could center it, you know, because I only don't even have an 8-foot run, and I could move it and it would be adequate for this spot. Then I can copy it and put it places. Now you don't have to like measure 8, then put 1, measure 8. You could go, of course I want one here, and of course I want one here. And that's the best thing about new build is she's planning it around this exact design. So I would copy this and say, that's where their little bed light will go, and they'll have a bed light on the other side as well. Hey, Logan. Logan, don't pull on that. Hey, Dad. Dad. I don't know what happened to my husband. I thank you for my watch, yes. Now go under the wire without pulling everything under. All right, so we'll put that one there. And then I could take it this way and I could mirror it about, let's see, is there a center point on my bed? Let me look at my things. You know, it's been a while. Let's turn center point, midpoint, and then close out. Try the mirror again. Mirror it about a midpoint of the bed. Okay. And no, enter. Okay. So now I've got those where I need them to be, and I would continue around about 8 foot, also thinking about what I'm going to put on here. Like here's a big empty hole. Maybe I want something, workout equipment. That requires electric. You can also put electric in floors. You know, for a lot of this big open area in here, you might want to not have cords running off to the walls. So that's where when we look in our symbols, a duplex floor receptacle, that would be this one in here.
I have a question, because I actually kind of want to put some lighting into the floor. Would that be on the reflected? That wouldn't be on the reflected ceiling
Correct.
fan. That'd
It
be.
would not. It would be on this electrical plan.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's kind of a dumb question.
No, it's okay. I get it. It's lighting. So like, you're showing how it's connected. So these are the floor plugs for anything that you want near your furniture without having cords running alongside the walls. And then there's lots of extra stuff. Thermostat for the wall. And remember, you're just communicating the reality of your specifications. So let's say you had a Nest. You know what a Nest is? It's like a thermostat, but on steroids that you can control from your phone. So then what's to say you can't take this symbol and just put the letter N in the middle and then put the word Nest here, and you're telling them that's what it is. So don't get hung up on these symbols. Symbols are meant to communicate ideas. If you want to make up your own, not these are very standardized, but for things that you have no idea what the symbol would be and can't find it, don't worry about it. Make up the symbol. As long as you communicate it, you will receive credit for it. Okay? So what am I looking at in the master bedroom? Bathrooms, I'm going to delete this off. You get the idea of switching lines. They have to be dashed. This switch connects to the wall and connects in here. In an ideal world, we trim the junk out of the middle when we're done with our switching lines. So if I click trim and I click my circles, I don't want to see this. It should connect to the edges. And in reality, if this was that can light symbol, we know that it should connect to the prongs that should be here. I just didn't copy the can because I wanted a new one. So I do this, and the real can light symbol, according to my key, looks like this. That's where these lines can connect into the prongs like this.
And then do you know if for Professor King's class, if she's looking for those to be accurate, like if it's like a
Yep.
6-inch light, it has to be a 6-inch.
Correctamundo.
Okay.
Yes. And so those are the major things. It would look like this. Clear out the middle, connect it with the lines, connect it to the wall. If you want it to locations, S3, single location 1. You can have this on this circuit if you want to. There's no rule about it's a different light, different circuit. It's just what you want on and off at any given time. Again, in master bathrooms, laundry rooms, and kitchens, you will not use this duplex. You will use the ground fault circuit interrupter one, the GFI. This one's exterior, this one's interior. So you're gonna be looking at using this one. That would go, above your cabinets where it's in the backsplash and you wanna have any type of, oven plugged into the back of the wall, even if the outlet's lower on the wall. Anything where there's even an option for water to be happening, I suggest it. Garages are great areas. You can have them other places, right? It's just kind of extra. So there's no rules against using these everywhere, although they pull a little bit more power, so we try not to, but better to err on the side of caution in those wet areas, bathrooms, and just do them all this way so that no one questions you, not a contractor and not someone with any type of safety development that's looking at your building. Track fixtures. So things on the wall show up here. So Brittany had said, well, what about the floor? Those would show up here, but also things on the wall, those become but they show up here and not in the reflected ceiling plan. So this is a track light that, let's say, is above my vanity sink for my master bathroom. So here's her master bathroom. This is the track light. I'm going to turn off my snap so I can just put it. It should attach to the wall for you guys. I'm just trying to save my snap time. Of course, the vanity wouldn't be right here by the door because that's disconcerting and it takes up a lot of space. So her vanity with her sink is right here, and this falls above it. I would probably want to switch on the other side of the door, so I could take this switch and mirror it in. It could be just a single switch, most likely for this, unless you have other things going on in here. But this would show up on my lighting, power, and communication plan. So at the end of the day, what does this look like? What does the finalized plan look like? If we go into, can you see the class right now? Did it move with me? Like I'm going out to what week? Okay, good.
Yeah.
So if we go into week 10 and we go under our assignments, I had included for the people, whenever there's students just taking my class but not the other, I include they have to copy my plan. So here's just a good kind of ballpark of what it looks like in the end. We have our switches and our outlets. We have anything that attaches to a switch, whether it's a ceiling fan or a light or a fan in a bathroom, like a ventilating fan. That one's above this tub, for instance. But notice the furniture is all in gray, right? And on here, the symbols are all in black. But this isn't just any furniture. This is furniture that, this is the way I like to think of it. If I was moving out of my house, I would leave it behind because I would be ripping it out to take it with me. So the vanity, this is a built-in sitting area. There's no chair because I'd take the chair with me if I had a makeup mirror chair. A bathtub, a shower, all of those fixtures and objects that would stay with the house, the toilet, if you were going to sell it, and give us an idea of space without being movable furniture. They show up as gray lined in your LPC plan. So that's where the toggling on and off becomes really important. At the end of the day, we want to be able to turn off her physical furniture that's fairly movable. And for her, she had it already able to do that. So once my lighting is placed, if I was going to have my lighting plan on another one, and this wouldn't exist because I don't see things that are on the ceiling, I just get an idea for what this is. I have my things, my furniture off. This bathroom vanity with the sink in it would stay on, but it would be gray. Now it won't be gray in this space, it'll be gray on my plan for this space. So down here, if we don't have it already, which I don't remember at this point, guys, because it's not my file. Do you have an LPC? Lighting, power, and communication plan?
I don't think we made it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have one.
So it's just a copy of that D, that ArchD file, which if we can take any of these files that we already have, our floor plan, I'm going to hit escape, right click it, and then you could say from template and sheet sets. This is back in the day, Imperial D. But she already had a couple, and then it would create a new one. LPC plan. Here's the biggest mistake I see students make. If you listened to Professor King this week, you are not required to do an entire reflected ceiling plan for her class. You know that, right? That might be
Yes.
a point of disconnect. So I'm repeating it again for the recording that we all hear. I'm showing the whole plan because for my class to get an idea of like what we're doing in space, it helps to look at the whole thing, especially for some of your elevations. But you're not required to do this whole thing except for me. Like for me, I want just the plan and then you can fill in only a portion of it. Okay. So for Mindy might say, the two areas I believe are, is it kitchen and dining and then master bedroom, master bath?
I don't think she specified what rooms we had to do.
Okay.
Or maybe she did. I don't know.
Okay.
I think she said we just have to do 3 rooms.
Yeah.
Okay. So whatever rooms it is, those are the walls you're copying. And then you're going to have LPC plans for those individual rooms or reflected ceiling plans for those rooms as like if we have one reflected ceiling plan, we could actually take this window that we have. I'm going to click out of it. And you could have multiple viewports so that you could have those 3 rooms without showing the whole plan because, right, you don't want to show what you didn't finish, if that makes sense. We only want to show the spaces that you actually finish. So if this was Mindy's and she was only going to show her bathroom, then you could take this whole plan that I have you drag in here and that she's only going to show the bathroom's reflected ceiling plan. She would zoom in close enough and say, here is my bathroom reflected ceiling plan. And then she could adjust this viewport to cut in to only show that. And then for the next room, if you do this and you do Control C, Control V, like we're just copying it, it's just a copy. And she said, besides that room, I want to do this room, which I can't read it. It was like the guest room, I think. So then she could close this off. And so she would have those 3 ceiling plans on the reflected ceiling plan sheet, but not have to do the whole reflected ceiling plan. Sometimes I know students have spent like their whole life doing the whole thing, and really it doesn't have to be that complicated because you're only required to do so many sections. So this makes it a little bit more digestible because it's not the whole plan. You just have to have the 3 of them. Our reflected ceiling plan, the size of it, I want to say that is still only a 1/4 inch for what the scale would be for these viewports. And again, I'm going to go through and change the instructions to be super clear. So it would be small like this, but then you also have to include your key that goes with your reflected ceiling plan and with your electrical plan. So that's where any key that you have, if this was this bedroom's key, it would also be at a 1/4 inch because you want the scale to match.
So this is how you want us to turn in our homework?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I think if we go back out to here, like you can see, except for I don't have the little, you know, my legend over here, this is kind of showing you like what it would look like after it's printed on a sheet over here. So it would have these items on and the legend, which I think I can make in like a little PDF format so it's more clear for you. Hold on. Okay, so if you had 3 rooms, you would have the legend that tells me the symbols that I'm seeing on those rooms. And in a way, it's kind of up to you because she's having you do like these individual ones. I'm thinking for the size of a lot of them, you could just do 1 sheet. If you need 2 reflected ceiling plan sheets because you're doing a bigger area, you can do that too. There's no rules as long as your sheets make sense, right? If I want 3 reflected ceiling plans, each on a different sheet with their own legend, that's okay too. But I want a clean area boxed in with my viewport, and then a clean area of the same size that is 1/4 inch with the symbols, so then I could look up here and go, oh, there's the fan for the bathroom, and that's a 6-inch can. So as you're building those 3 rooms in CAD, go back in here. Oh my gosh, my poor husband. I feel really bad for him right now. You would put your symbols for this in its own thing, which we said for mechanical should have things like these things here. And you could change it to say LPC legend, like to make things, again, I've just included tons of symbols. So this is my LPC legend. It's as easy as editing this, LPC legend. And here's my plan. This furniture always is like anything colored happens in the sheet. It doesn't happen here. So when I'm in my sheet and you're like, how did you get your furniture to be gray, but have it be white for when you want to turn this stuff off and have it be a furniture plan again? That happens for my sheet in here. We'll do a viewport. I was building my beep boop, and then we can double click to get in. We want to be in this space. So this is my lighting, power, and communication for her room. I like to do 2 separate viewports instead of do stuff like this. I bet you guys have a ton of stuff around your model at this point. Like this is still, I would rather you build your legend somewhere off in the space and then again add another viewport. Single. Okay. And say down here, double click. I know I put that start to my plan here. I want that to be a 1/4 inch. And then this also should be a 1/4 inch. Everything should have an actual scale, which means I can tighten this up to be tight to that room. I would probably turn off my deck because you wouldn't see that in reality for what we're doing this. Yeah, not necessarily. So here, so this is kind of the start. You want to organize it pretty on the page. You know, I'm trying to just give you an idea of like layout here. So 1 LPC plan, since you have 3 spaces, we could put 3 on here or have 1 sheet for each. Just kind of a waste of paper. So then if I come in here and I say in my paper space, I want to open up these, and there's more options in here. Like there's viewport line view and viewport line type and viewport color. So when I'm in a viewport in a sheet, if I want it to be gray only there, I want to use the one that says viewport color, VP color. And for my drawing, I'm going to have to close out of this so I can see what layer I even had this on. Really, it would probably be on that furniture layer, or she had a fixtures one, which I think I have turned off. So I'm going to put it on her furniture label. She might have like a bathroom furniture one for all I know. And I'm going to go and turn some layers on. So her furniture We'll turn back on. And I want the viewport color of her furniture to be a gray. Okay. So see how it's gray here? But when I go back into my model, it is white. So that grayness is driven by the viewport window. So I'm double clicked into the viewport, and then I went to my layers. I found wherever she had it, which for me was furniture. It could be on, bathroom fixtures or wherever you have it. And when I found that layer, then I changed its viewport color to be gray. The viewport color, VP. And it made it so it's only gray in this view. You can see her bed became gray, but I wouldn't have the bed in this layer, so I would only have the fixtures, which hopefully is on a separate layer. So at this time, anything that's stuck, showers, bathtubs, vanities, blah, 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 that's not that. We want it on a layer that we can keep on when we turn off our furniture layer. Hopefully we can turn off the bed, these end tables, etc. And this is what a final plan would look like. It'd have the symbols minus the furniture. I'm going to delete it like I turned it off, but kept my vanity over here. It wouldn't have her end tables. It wouldn't have her plush little things here. Poor dad. All right. It would simply look like this. Switches, duplex, lighting, switch lines, anything on the wall, sconces, tracks that come off of the wall, any lighting in the floor, because that has some type of switch, right? If it can be switched and it's a light, then it would technically show. I think, Brittany, though, that it would be dashed. So like the fixture itself, if it's in the floor because it's below the cut plane for this is about like ends at so many inches above the floor still, where the duplex receptacles are. So I would still show them dashed because they're in the floor to give.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that would convey that idea across well.
Okay. So this would be a finished LPC plan, and that's one that sits on top. It should be on top of your furniture plan. This is the other thing students do to me every year. They copy it off to the side like this, and they have this other plan with light switches. The point is to learn that if this was a real situation in the field, most of the time, every single one of these would be toggled on top of each other. This was just me being nice to put this reflected ceiling plan out and not have 100 things, because I know a lot of you did not do a good job with your layers, and so that would just be one more miserable layer switch. But for these little plans, I want us to get used to organizing our layers, because I'm teaching you CAD, I'm not teaching you design. So a little bit of both going on this week as we're doing them for both the classes. Logistically, because basically your homework is do the power and communication plan and do the lighting. For the reflected ceiling plan, again, things we don't have, no switching lines, nothing that's lower than a door. So that means all these receps go away. But anything that connects and touches the ceiling, we would have. This is a weird thing, though, that I want you to think about. When you think about a pendant light, right, what touches the ceiling? It's not the pendant. It's the teeny tiny bracket, right? So what does this look like on a reflected ceiling plan? How does this change? This is what you'd see on a reflected ceiling plan versus what you're seeing on this plan. I would see, just like that 3-form panel that I did earlier today, I would see the bracket as solid because it is touching and cutting through the surface of the ceiling. But I would see the light part as dashed because it is falling below but connected to that system of bracketry. Does that make sense to everybody? My people, I have lost you. Any people want to comment?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Just,
Okay. It's a lot.
yeah. Do we want to show our walls hatched on the reflected ceiling plan?
On your reflected ceiling plan, every solid wall, like your drywalls that aren't openings, like doors and windows, are solid hatched. and all openings are hatched as the model that I brought you in, this style of hatch.
So I meant the other plan,
Oh, this plan?
yeah.
So they should be hatched, but I wouldn't expect it for this week if you're still kind of moving some stuff around. You know, I don't want you to hatch a not final 100% finalized plan. Some of you are all over the place, but in the end, they'll be hatched for both your furniture plan and your lighting plan, right? It's the same plan. So I don't expect it to be clean and hatched and beautiful like that for this plan. Like
Those
I,
were the copy. Okay. And
okay.
also, why did you put the legend twice on the, I think it was a reflected ceiling plan?
I put it on, so for the reflected ceiling plan page, I put it twice because technically your spaces might not be in the same room. So if you had a laundry room, it would be different than the symbols. Maybe that would be in your living room. So for each space that you're representing a ceiling plan, because we're not doing an overall plan, you might want completely different legends. You could do one, but I don't know how you feel like laying them out. So you could have all three here and then have one big legend to the side.
Okay.
But it might make more sense for a person to say this legend tells me about this room and this. So however you want to communicate it is fine.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
I have a question,
Yeah.
Alison.
Maricela.
Can we do the lighting and electrical plan in the reflected ceiling plan, like in the same?
You cannot do them in the same because they're showing different things. And most importantly, Maricela, it's that there's actually a rule about the reflected ceiling plan that it's only things that touch the ceiling. That like if you cut into things, like everything has a different cut height, right? So for this kind of section view, we're showing all of these things. For this one, what you're communicating by hatching the walls and everything is, I'm no longer telling you anything but what touches the flatness of the ceiling and where that is at.
Okay.
And so those receps are on the lower wall, right? When you think about your house where you're plugging your stuff into, anything that's in a wall, you can't see it because we can't see it. We're like God's eye view, only looking up at the ceiling.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so they are separate plans and they communicate separate things. This one communicates what's on the ceiling and this one communicates the other electrical, like all the plugs and how to turn it on and off.
All right. And in the lighting and electrical plan, do you need us to put the furniture in there, or can we just put the lighting things? And
You do not, Maricela, put any furniture that you can move. So this is where, this is your, like right now, Maricela, you should have a final floor plan quotation as close as you are. So on top of this plan, that's why we created the new layers tonight. We add the dashes and we need all the furniture, like anything you could push in your house, your bed, your end tables, your rugs, all of that needs to be able to turn off and will not be on for the lighting and power plan when we look at it in this view. It'll be turned off. But the furniture that is and must be on is anything that is built into the house, like your bathtub, your shower, your sink bases, anything that you wouldn't be able to move.
That should be on a fixtures layer.
It can be, yeah. So those should be on a fixtures layer or whatever you want to call it. You could call it something more like bathroom items, or I don't care, as long as you can toggle them on and off.
okay.
Okay. Is there anything like abstractly or conceptually, hopefully this has actually been good for you, like you've learned something tonight conceptually.
I have another quick question, if you
Yeah.
don't mind. So I'm doing a loft. Where would I do the ceiling plan from?
That's its own ceiling plan. And when you have a loft, you're thinking of it as its own house almost, right? So you would come out here and say, if that's what's on the ceiling and this is my ceiling plan, then everything else would be dashed, like the railing and the floor line of that would be dashed to represent that there's something there blocking us from seeing everything else below it. Does that make sense? So usually you take your, like, let's say, so the loft is somewhere in here, okay? If I have the loft in here, it usually has its own ceiling plan for whatever area you have for the loft in there.
Mhm.
And it's like the viewport is smaller and only representing the ceiling for the loft.
So if I wanted to do the ceiling plan for both of them, I would just like copy and paste and do just like a different one, because to do the floor underneath it.
If you wanted to do, yes, exactly. You would copy
Okay.
and you would need to copy and paste. And then for this one, it would be like, I believe the walls, how this is hatched in here. How would we want to do that? I think it's easier to not try and explain it and just say exactly what you're thinking right now. The two separate plans, and treat one like this floor is its own house, and the other one
Okay.
below as if that one's not above it. And
Okay.
treat the lighting below it like it's just another flat plane because it's the bottom of the floor above, and draw all the lights like you would for that lower level.
Okay. Okay, I think I got it. And then would I need to include that?
Include what?
The loft for the homework.
It's your choice. So for my class, I only just give you this whole thing so everyone has an opportunity at starting walls for all the areas, if that makes sense. But you
Mhm.
only turn into me, like, what I'm looking at is this. So it's like, I'm mostly concerned about seeing finalized sets of spaces, just like Professor King is.
Okay.
So I will only be looking at in the big model, if you only fill in the room over here and a portion of the room over here, that's what I will look at.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. If you have any more questions, we're not that far
Well,
over.
I know I'm gonna have a ton of questions on this because my kitchen and dining room are in that middle part and there's no loft. So I'm gonna I wanna do ceiling coverings and beams up there.
Okay.
And with the lighting, I'm thinking that the lighting is mostly going to be coming off of those beams that are set 10 foot, they're going to be,
Yeah, these beams going this way.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So that's,
So the beams in the reflected ceiling plan for your situation, what you would do is your beams, the beams technically, although they're hatched, the thing is saying you could do them as dashed all the way around if you don't want to have as much visual mess. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
you're like,
'cause
it's lower than the ceiling. So it should
Mhm.
technically be a dash. If it was a hatch, it could just be a grayer hatch than a solid, like a dark. You know what I mean? We can change the colors and things. But so if you dash out your beams, then in the middle of the beams, it'll be easier for you to see. You're like, I actually want my can light or my pendants hanging off of those beams. And then you will also dash those. But
Okay.
then you should maybe signify those by saying, like, here's this symbol. Okay. So I have a light that's on here, and let's say I make up a new symbol to say these are the pendants that are coming off of this beam. Then you'd have this little symbol, and it would be over in your thing. And then
Mhm.
over in your thing, there's one other thing I didn't mention that's not necessary, but this is how it looks in the field. So you'd have the symbol, and then it would say pendant light. And then you could say next to that pendant light, if you don't want to put a bunch of stuff over here, you can always put any notes over here, and you could say pendant light attached to, like, or like, what would we want to say? Yeah,
Affixed to beam.
yeah, affixed to beam, and then blah, blah, blah. So that would be fine. There's also, like, if you're like, that's not enough notes and I really want to talk about installation, then usually you have a notes section and you do the little dot, and then it's just like blah, 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 blah. That can be another box that shows up on your plan next to your legend. It says notes. And then anything you couldn't express to your contractor through this, you could say, for all pendant lights attached to beam, they are to be da da da, right? But you don't want that in your symbols legend. So that's just general notes is what we call that section.
So what I'm thinking is that my reflected ceiling plan is going to be really messy because where the ceiling is sloped all the way up to the peak, I want to have like a wood covering, and I want to have beams as well. You know what I mean? To fill in that open space that's going to be up there. They're very tall ceilings.
Mm-hmm. So I would say you could sing, because you're saying like, is this all open in here?
Like
Or is,
the flat plane, the sloped plane of the ceiling will be covered in wood. And then I want to float beams down in the head space up there in the peak.
Mhm.
And I don't know how in the heck I'm going to convey that.
So what I would say is, if you're going to have the beams, we would dash those all out. You keep the solid line here, right?
Mhm.
And then what you would say is, between the beams, I would probably hatch.
Hatch. Yeah, I was thinking so. It's gonna look very decorative.
It will. And it's like this beautiful, I mean, it can be chaotic, but it can also be a beautiful thing. You could also take it and say, I'm trying to think of a way in which, like, we get all of the beams in here, we keep the slope, and then without hatching around them, you could say, for area falling between this beam and this beam, there's all sloped space is covered in a veneer that's 1/4 inch thick. Does that make sense? So it's like
Yeah, it
between
does.
this and this, you could have a
I'm
little
gonna have to
arrow.
note. I'm gonna have to leave a couple notes, but not too many. I don't want to. I don't
Yeah.
want to get in the habit of leaving a bunch of notes.
Yeah. So if you don't want to draw just that wood veneer, I would say center sloped area, but it is all covered in veneer above beams. And then it's like one and done.
Cool.
Okay.
Thanks.
So Alison, I have another question. Do you want us to do all the rooms for the lighting?
I do not. I only want what Professor King is asking for. So just like in here, how you saw me, Maricela, come on here and kind of consolidate. At the end of the day, you pick the 2 spaces she's asking for, and you'll do the same thing you did for both the reflected ceiling and lighting. We're just going to zoom in on that space, only finish those spaces.
Okay, all right. I think Professor King, I'm reading right now, and it says only like your living room or kitchen or your master bedroom.
See, that's what I thought. That's what I had been in the past. It was living room, kitchen, master bedroom, master bath, or something like 2 areas together. But she might have just said, 2 areas at this point because there's something you guys like better. You know what I mean? So I would say minimum 2 good areas, and don't pick. So here's what I really tell students. What can I tell you don't do? Don't pick the pantry. You know what I mean? Like, don't be that person. That's silly. No, seriously, like, that's all we're asking. Why do we even have to give the instructions in the first place? It's like, don't pick the closet. Just pick things that you want your client to show. And so then that's where we get into efficiency as you move forward in these design classes. It's like, I always tell my people, 1, fake it till you make it. There's lots of ways around doing what you have to, but making it look excellent. That's a story for another day. 2, have 1 excellent thing and 1 mediocre thing that balances to make great thing, because you can't have everything be excellent. We just can't, and have this project get finished in time. So pick the 1 really nice kitchen and do the kitchen with all this stuff and really like go hard, and then pick a smaller bathroom that's still not a closet, right? So pick 1 really excellent thing, pick 1 smaller doable thing, and do them well.
All right, thank you.
All right. Anything else?
When are you good to do meets?
So I would say that
I
starting
like
next,
the weekend.
yes, weekends are okay for me. And as long as you text me like you usually do, then a little bit ahead of the time in the day to let me know what you're thinking is good. Nap time is usually for my baby are like anywhere from like noon to 2. So those times are usually best because I can just let the 4-year-old be with dad or actually be on his own because he's very self-sufficient. So on weekends, those are good times for me, or evenings are good times for me. But then starting next week, I'm on break for the other school and I'm stuck at home like everybody else is. So if you want to meet, you know, my husband still works full time and, oh, well, no, he's on break too. So that's the thing. I can meet really anytime next week if you make
Okay.
an appointment in advance.
Okay. Next week feels like it's going to be the week I'm going to hit it hard and get a lot done.
Okay.
So that'll work out. I'll be texting you.
Sounds good. And next week, I will catch up on grading by Tuesday. So everything will be graded. All right. Well, without anything else, I'm going to end the meeting.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Have a
Bye.
good evening. Have a good break. Well, you don't have break. Have good work.
Happy quarantine.
Yes.